Hi, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Danny, and this is the Common Rule Podcast. So, how have you been? Hopefully you guys had a great week of creating magic. Staying out of trouble. Hopefully, I hope you guys really enjoyed the last episode of the Common Rule. The conversation I had with Billy. I think we really touched on some really cool subject. That was part one. We had a really nice long conversation. I'll work on part two and post that up later on as well. One of the things that isn't on that podcast that we did end up talking about later on is he recommended that I watch the Fire Festival documentary. It's on the Netflix, and essentially what it is, it's a documentary about this cat who put on this festival that ended up being a complete fiasco. It was terrible. However, the concept was sold just on social media. Everyone who had a smartphone didn't even need to log on to any computer or anything at all. You could have followed this whole thing through your Instagram, essentially, through an app. It was all started by social media influencers. It wasn't like some sort of big marketing campaign on TV or during a Super Bowl or anything like that. And that is something that really just kind of hit me. And I'm like, wow, okay, that's deep. And that's something that I asked Billy if he would come back on and talk about that show or talk about that documentary and dissect it with me and talk about the power of social media and how that can apply to creating and selling a concept on the creative side. I just think that is really something worth diving deep into, especially with somebody like Billy who's probably got a better backstory on that than most of us do. It's a concept that I am going to actually try to apply to my photography on the other side, on my Red House magazine side, and see if I can't create projects solely based on influencers. It's an experiment, and I did mention it in that podcast, the last podcast of that conversation with Billy. So we'll see how that goes. I'll let you know if it works out as well. So I'm going to take you on. I decided that I wanted to keep talking about the art show in a sense, but don't worry, I'm not going to beat this thing down to the ground. I actually have, some content here it's not all about, hey, look at my art show, this, that, and the other. I decided to take you guys on a little journey of how I process certain things afterwards. The question is, okay, so now what? My project is over. I did the art show. That concept and that project essentially is going to get put to bed. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to shoot any more still lives or I'm not going to shoot any more rotting fruit, because I love shooting rotting fruit. It's just, another concept that I don't think is explored enough. But that might be more of a personal project and maybe have a single shot sort of a set, not exactly like a whole series of photographs that I have. The other story that I think that I'm going to tell, just as far as a different sort of subject, is I think I'm going to do the same series of death and dying with a bouquet of flowers or a single flower, and something along those lines where I can actually make a legitimate something that would be more of a, I don't know, I call it a commercialized still life. Show you what happens after the pretty picture. And get into the more in-depth conversation about life. So I think flowers is going to be a great set. I just need to set up and shoot it for maybe another 10 days or so. And I decided that I'm going to strictly use, not to bore you guys with the technical aspects, but I'm going to use the big fat cameras, the big large format cameras that in order to get a really controlled depth of field that I have envisioned in my head. And I'll come back to that later because that just is a little point that I want to make here. So the project is over. How do we process what just happened with our project? Do we take a little time off? Do we get to work right away on the next project? I don't know. I equate this to like reading a great novel. Once I'm done reading it, I don't go and read the next book right away. I take a little time off. I digest, especially on one of those novels that hits you and you're like, yeah, damn, that was fucking great. What the hell was that all about? You sit there, you let it ferment, you let it simmer, whether it's an actual writing a quote unquote book report, like in grade school, or just make mental notes about the characters, the plot line, what happened, what was the twist, what am I supposed to take away with it, what was the author's overall intent. I process that overall than just a story. I mean, and sometimes, some novels are easy reads, other novels are, crazy, They're all worth emotionally digesting before you move on to the next reading or to the next book or to even the next article in your favorite magazine. And I think that's the key. In this case, after my little art show here, at least the first one, I'm lucky enough the pictures are still going to be up for a couple more art shows this month. I got lucky. It looks like there's Art Detour coming up and Third Friday. They're going to stay up. But I had great conversations with people who really wanted to know what it is that I was trying to say with the photographs. And I can tell that they were a little put off about some of the things that I had showing. My hanging fruit series is certainly something that's not easy to look at in the sense that it's not a pretty still life. And whether I failed or was successful in trying to project an idea across, that's different than the actual subject matter that I was presenting. But I did like that some people came up and go, "Hey man, I love what you're doing. What exactly is going on here? I think this is a great concept." And, we had great conversations. So I took mental notes and, put some notes on my phone as to how, if I wanted to carry on this project more or ideas for a next project. This is where I got the flower idea as well, where I'm thinking like the series of still life dying in front of you seems to connect with certain people. When I stood back and I watched older people look at my photographs, their reaction was a little different than younger people looking at the photograph. And it seemed like the older people kind of right away latched on to certain concepts, and the kids needed a little more explanation. Maybe not as far as an explanation as to what the photograph means, but more of a confirmation as to what they feel when they saw the image. A couple of conversations really got nice and in depth with a couple of kids. Now, once I've processed the project and I'm over it, I approach it just like a book report. I see what happened, get people's feedback, not necessarily on the technical aspect of it, but their feedback on their emotional level on it and their reactions to it. And again, I'm lucky enough to go through this a couple more times and see how many more notes I'm going to be able to take on this. But once I've processed that and taken notes and let it simmer, then I approach my notepad, my idea notepad, and start sketching out ideas for the next project. If you don't have a project notebook, I highly recommend you start one. No matter how lofty your idea is and how ridiculous it is and how it could be maybe not financially viable, write it down, because that idea will in turn spin off other ideas as well. And maybe you can come up with maybe a little compromise as to what you can and can't do in a project. For instance, I have a really lofty project that I want to do one day. I want to drive around America and photograph the last of the Made in America products, from tea to baseball gloves, baseball bats, to guitars. There is a dying commercial aspect of America right now where everything is being made overseas. Everything's made in China nowadays, or, insert your favorite country there. You know what I'm talking about. While it might be a spinoff of The Americans, that photography book, The Americans by Mr. Frank, I think it's important to know that there's just only maybe a couple places in America left that still make the rivets or something like that, even from a steelworker's perspective, to where I think a lot of the steel nowadays is coming from China. So, and the impact that it's having on the environment as well. And that's a whole other can of worms. Anyway, I wrote that in my little notebook. Obviously, right now, the funding isn't there. Netflix or Amazon or, whatever big photography foundation, Magnum, hasn't come my way and go, "Danny, here's a grant for it and go have at it." And of course, I doubt that anyone like that ever will. Not feasible financially for me to go across America right now. But you know what I can do? I can go knock on doors that are in town. There's a guy who makes handmade leather boots and belts right on 16th Street over here. I'm going to go and talk to him. I think he's the last of his generation. I'm not sure if he's going to continue the business once he's gone. There's a person up the street. I don't know if they're still there, but there's like this company, this family that started, I think it's called Red Cup Living, something like that. But they make those red cups that you use at parties and stuff. Well, they have different sizes that are actual really hard plastic that are reusable. They're badass and it's pretty cool. And they got a bunch of other products as well. I bought it online or something like that. And when I found out that the company's actually right here in Phoenix, and even better, it's over a couple of streets, I asked if I can go essentially pick up the products that I bought. We talked a little bit, and that's something that I can go into. Obviously, I want to go in and talk to taco stands. You know, you guys know I love tacos. So that spun off of this great, huge idea. That's why I keep a little idea notebook and write down even the most ridiculous goals and projects that I know that maybe will come to fruition or not. There are little projects that come along that I'm like, well, I can do that. That's good. If I start talking to people in that sense, then that'll get me practice for and get ready for if and when I do have the opportunity to travel America and do my big project. Once I go back into my idea notebook, I don't start working right away. And it's not just because I'm lazy, because, I'm not a procrastinator. Well, I'm not a terrible procrastinator, but, I don't get to work on stuff right away, but I get it done. The reason I don't go into it right away is because I feel like I need to purge completely the other project and purge the last technique I use and hopefully not keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And that's the idea. I don't know. There's always something as an artist that subconscious that you keep falling back onto that's comfortable. We all, I think, suffer from that every once in a while. And I think that sometimes my music photography does tend to suffer from that if the band that I'm looking at is essentially just, I call them a regular band. Like if they just go up, play great music, inspirational type music, but don't exactly, burn their guitars or jump into the audience or, dive into the audience or anything like that. And it gets to, if I keep shooting someone, and I know this, like if I keep shooting someone at the same venue, that the lighting never changes unless they bring their own lighting, of course. If I go to too many rock shows at the same venue frequently, I get into like, oh, this is the best spot for this picture. This is the best spot for that picture. So, and I know that, so I kind of have to step back and go, all right, let me approach this a little differently. Where haven't I shot here? How low can I go? Am I going to go down on my knees? Am I going to try and find the craziest angle? Will it let me go backstage or something like that? I don't know. Anyway, I think that if we don't take a step back and at least think about the project we just finished and try to purge that a little, we might run the risk of keep repeating ourselves. And that's something that, nobody wants that, especially us, right? We don't want to keep shooting the same banana over and over again. But I do have other ideas for bananas. I do have other ideas for flowers. Like in literature, there's only so many plots. It doesn't matter. It's just how you tell the story. We can always come up with a different way of telling that same story with more interest and with a different point of view if we step back and process the last project that we've done. That's essentially what I'm going through right now. I am finishing out, digesting, and purging this project, and can't wait to move on to the next one. I've already bought the big film and a bunch of other shit that's coming too, so that I can facilitate my creative process, so to speak. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great week of creating. If you guys are in Phoenix, a couple of things that are happening. I'm putting this show out, what is this, Thursday? Friday night, I want to tell you guys, there's a great rock show at the Rebel Lounge. Dude, it's only $10. You guys need to go. One of the great bands, Luau Bands, is releasing their albums. There's a couple other bands too. I believe I don't know if it's Merch or March. They stylized their name MRCH, duo. Nice band. I saw them once at the Valley Bar. Cool band. And Celebration Guns are going to be there. Great local band. I've only photographed them once, but it's great music. I ended up downloading most of their catalog that they had at the time. And L West, the one of the bigger bands out here that is going to come through for Luau Band. I guess they had some issues with their opening bands before, but L West is going to come through and make this a badass show. I suggest everyone grab a ticket and go. And Saturday, the Flying Burrito Food and Music Festival. I've never been. It's reasonably priced. There's a mariachi, all women mariachi band that I've been wanting to see for a while. So I'm going to check that out. There's a bunch of other bands as well that are going to be playing, local bands. Man, I just drew a blank. You guys look it up. Flying Burrito. There's a lot of great bands showing up there too. And if I see you guys up there, come up, say hello, and hopefully, we'll have a great time. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate that. Have a great day and enjoy your youth.